from Clyde Golden, I'm Tim Yaden, and this is Input Doc. It's the podcast where we explore what marketers need and what agencies provide. Input Doc is sponsored by the School of Visual Concepts in Seattle. Listeners of Input Doc receive 15% off classes at SVC by using the discount code InputDoc15 when you sign up for a class at svcseattle.com. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Daniel Quasar, the designer of the 2018 Progress Pride flag. We talk about Daniel's creative process when creating the flag and what it was like to have their intellectual property suddenly go viral, and then how today they balance being a creative with being a business owner. Thanks for listening. How's it going?
It's going really well. How are you?
Good. It's nice to meet you in person. On the internet.
Hey, this is just as valuable as anything else.
Just keep telling ourselves that. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
Everybody, I'm joined today by Daniel Quasar. Daniel's a graphic designer and musician in Portland who in 2018 designed the Progress Pride flag. So Daniel added a 5-color chevron to Gilbert Baker's classic 6-bar rainbow flag to place a greater emphasis on inclusion and progression. Welcome to Input Doc, Daniel. I'm excited to chat with you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really fun. I'm already enjoying myself.
Good. I really wanted to hear your story about why 40 years after Gilbert Baker created the original Pride flag, why did we need an update to the Pride flag?
So I don't think so much it was like a conscious decision for me to be like, well, it's been 40 years. Let's have a look at that. But a lot of it for me personally stemmed from there was the Philadelphia Pride flag, the More Color, More Pride flag that Amber Hikes did in 2017, which was gaining a lot of traction. And I appreciate it a lot. And then Seattle in 2018 in like May unveiled their own version of it where they added the trans flag on top of the brown and black stripes of the More Color, More Pride flag, just as a way to also say like, trans people are included in this. And I saw that and I was like, that's great. It's fantastic. This was in Seattle. But I was like, but now you're like running into territory where the message is amazing. The message is great. There's nothing wrong with the message. But you're running into design territory where it just starts to turn into, for the lack of a better term, a layer cake.
Right.
11 stripes all stacked on top of each other can get pretty convoluted really fast. And I don't find anything really wrong with that. I don't think there are a lot of rules in vexillology, but also one of the rules is who cares about the rules. So I'm a firm believer in who cares about the rules. With that said, I was like, I really like what's being done here, but I want to see if I can do something to emphasize the message or to elevate the message, to add something to it. And I will acknowledge that, I just was stepping into space that I didn't need to, obviously, but I wanted to. And it kind of, in a way, was my way to take action in an area where, taking action is more important than saying something. I'm not really the person who goes down protesting and things like that. Not that I don't think protesting is, I have nothing wrong with protesting. It scares me. Um, and but I believe in all the people who are totally capable of doing that and support them wholeheartedly. So this was my kind of way of taking action and doing something with what I am capable, using my talents to do something for the greater good. That is kind of the why.
Mm-hmm.
Of why I did it was kind of just like I saw what was being done and I wanted to see if I could do something more with it.
You as a designer looked at what was created and you understood the concept and thought, we need to clarify this, or I need to.
Yeah.
I want to add my design skills to this question and see if I can help this tell this story a little clearer or clarify this symbol.
Yeah. And in turn, I ended up adding to the story because it became the Progress Pride flag because just by the very nature of the way that I went about taking what the other two designers had done and formulating this new image idea, it added to the message itself, which was a sense of progress and the need for progress, which wasn't necessarily something that was inherent in the original design. I mean, it's implied in the message, but it wasn't inherent in the original design. Um, so I think I didn't just, reformulate what was already done, but I added to in a way.
The pride flag itself has a really interesting history.
Oh
That
yeah,
it, and so you obviously noticed you're on the Wikipedia page for the pride flag,
I am.
and
I
so
totally did not edit myself into that.
and the flag itself started off with 8 bars. Like I
Yes.
just love the background of the pride flag. And
Yeah.
do you know the story, or should I walk through it from what I can
I
remember?
do know the story, and I'd be happy to kind of give my paraphrased version of it.
Please.
So the original Gilbert Baker pride flag had 8 stripes. It was pink, red, orange, yellow, green, turquoise, blue, and violet. Originally, it was a technicality that they couldn't mass produce the pink color at that time in, I believe, 1978 or something like that. And so they had to strip it out for that reason. And then Harvey Milk said, made a request of, can you simplify it down even more? And that's what brought it down to the 6 stripe flag that we now see as I don't really call that. A lot of people call the 6 stripe flag like the original. And I'm like, it's not. It's not, it's like the third or fourth. So I often call it like the traditional pride flag because that fits to me better. Um, and so yeah, that's the brief like elevator pitch of the history of the Gilbert Baker pride flag.
And what's interesting is hot pink represented sex, red represented life, orange was healing, yellow was sunlight, green was nature, turquoise was magic and art, indigo serenity, and violet spirit. And I had never really thought through what each color would represent.
Yeah, and I believe Gilbert Baker had said that the colors and their designations represented like the essence of people, like the culmination of people, like all these parts are that's how people can say that it's all inclusive of everyone in the community because it doesn't represent, each stripe doesn't represent a different part of the community. It represents an essence of who we are as a community.
I want to walk through, you design an updated Progress Pride flag. And how do you release that to the community? And what are the odds that it suddenly is embraced and takes off?
Well, that's like asking who has the sorcerer's stone, kind of thing, or where the Holy Grail is. It's not really easy to answer. Um, I didn't make it for the purpose of getting out there to like go viral or do something. I made it because I thought it was cool and I wanted to do something. And I wrote out this long like post about it on my Facebook, made that public, and just went to bed with that and kind of just woke up to it, blowing itself up. So that was like what I did and how I released it. But as far as like the viral part of it, your guess is as good as mine as how that works because I don't know. I know that a couple of my friends who have a pretty large social media following shared it while I was sleeping. So I'm sure that that probably played some kind of role in it. But really, it just comes down to, you don't really know who kicked the snowball over, but once it's rolling, you just that's where it is.
So the next morning you wake up and you open up Facebook, and what do you see?
Oh, I didn't need to open up Facebook. All I had to do was look at my screen and see that I kept getting notification literally for 8 hours straight. My phone was beeping every 3 seconds. So I did try to like keep up with the Facebook post, but it was like moving so fast that I kind of at a certain point just had to stop and step back a little bit just because I'm like, all right, let's let the smoke settle a little bit here. And then we'll hop in and see what to do with this. Cause also it was the first time that anything of mine had really like done anything or gone anywhere like super big like that.
What did this feel like?
Like I was gonna die. That sounds terrible, but um, to give you a little bit of backstory on that, I had recently started dealing with really bad anxiety and agoraphobia that kind of manifested in my life in the like 6 months prior. It's something in my family, so it's not like I didn't know something was going to happen eventually. Um, so for me, uh, that entire day was like one like run on, like one all day panic attack the entire time. Like I remember calling one of my friends and I'm on the phone with my hand shaking, just being like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do about it. And he's just like, calm down, take a breath. You're going viral. It will be fine. I kind of just had to work with it in the state that I was, regardless, because you kind of just have to roll with things. You can't just, I could have just turned off my phone and hid from it for a few weeks and just let it go. But at the end of the day, I couldn't really, let that just sit there without doing something either.
That makes sense. And on the side that disliked it, what sort of pushback did you get? And did it feel fair?
I I did get some pushback, and I always first and foremost that will say that everyone, whoever has anything to say, like their feelings are always valid. I'm not going to invalidate somebody's feelings. I'm not necessarily going to take everything that somebody says, because if I take everything everyone says, it's you're going to run a battle of in circles that's never going to end. I did get some pushback from a few people in communities of color who felt that I was overstepping my boundaries as a white person, which is totally valid. But you have to like kind of like think about it from the perspective of, you get mixed messages from the same community, whereas you get like an amount of people who are like, thank you for making this thing that represents us and really pushes the message. I also want to preface, I never was doing this to be a savior. Like it's not my job to be a white savior. That's not my thing. I'm just using my talents and my capabilities and whatever influence that I thought I had at the time to push things forward. But you have an amount of people who say that they love it and that they appreciate what you're doing from those communities, and then you have an amount of people from those same communities who don't like it. So I kind of just went with acknowledging to the best I could the people who had feedback that was negative. I tried to work with that as much as I could, both mentally and being in the state that I was, highly anxiety ridden, like not able to really handle a lot of things in that realm. I'm just also not really good with confrontation and criticism, anyways. Like it's just not my. It's hard. I've gotten a lot better, but it's hard. So I tried to at least acknowledge that that was there, but at the same time, take note of the fact that there's this overwhelming amount of people who appreciate it from those communities, and saying, well, that has a lot of value.
Hi, listeners. It's Megan, the producer of Input Doc. Today, I'm here with Larry Asher, the director of the School of Visual Concepts in Seattle. Recently, Larry was featured on an episode of Input Doc talking about SVC's switch to online learning. Larry, thanks for coming on the show again.
Well, thanks. Actually, I want to thank you guys because I've been known to blab on endlessly, and so that you were able to edit that down to 35 minutes is a major feat. Thank you for that. So for those of you that are listening to this episode and have 35 minutes to kill, I hope you'll go back and dig that one out and listen to it. We talked about transitioning to online learning. Now, if that's of interest to you and you'd like to give online learning a chance, we're making a special offer for listeners of Input Doc. All you have to do is find a workshop on our website, svcseattle.com, that's of interest to you. Enter the code INPUTDOC15 when you register, and we'll give you a 15% discount right then and there.
Thank you so much, Larry. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm really looking forward to taking my next SVC class. But until then, back to the show.
As a creative, you got a lifetime of feedback all in one day.
It was like art school critique day, but it hasn't ended yet.
Yeah. The entire world had something to say to you that day.
Exactly.
And getting feedback from clients, from other people, you get desensitized to it over time, and some of it just becomes business. That said, you're often just trying to solve it in the way you think is right, and you got to go with it.
Yeah. Again, I didn't do this with the intent of telling people what they could and couldn't do. This is a supplemental item that is used in conjunction of. I did just keep telling them, I'm like, hey, you know what? If that flag works for you, then you fly that flag. Nobody's telling you you can't. But if this flag works for you, hey, it's here for you too. Like, no one's forcing you to do anything. So all these people that kept talking to me like I was forcing something on them, I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have not forced anything on you. You decided to engage with it and take it on this like personal level. That's not my fault or my like issue, and it's if it's not for you, then it's not for you, and that's fine.
It's just such a strange, interesting experience. And you see all sorts of things go viral over time. Somebody just gets big for a day. And the experience of going through it is interesting to hear. Here we are. Will this be year 3? It's
Yes.
been 3 years, and yours has a bit more staying power than just a flash in the pan thing that occurred.
Yeah.
And you're still working through this.
Yeah.
And this is a piece of intellectual property of yours that has been embraced by the community. And what is the tension between letting the community use it and then yet controlling its use?
So originally when I released it, I put it under a CC license.
Creative Commons?
Yeah, Creative Commons.
Okay.
Um, and I did like a non-commercial share alike with attribution international license kind of thing. Just because I was like, there's a lot more to that. Like there's a lot of depth in my reasoning there that a lot of people didn't really understand at first. And I got a lot of pushback because people are like, how can you like control a iconic symbol that belongs to the community? And I'm just like, well, I get that, but also I am an artist and I understand and firmly believe that artists deserve recognition and compensation for their work. I don't believe in the continued stigma that art is free and artists are poor and need to be legit artists. So I always push back against things like that. And that was kind of where I was going for with my flag, where I was just kind of like, you can use this, but, non-commercially. If you want to talk commercial, we can talk about it. Also, I just also had no idea what the heck I was doing. So I kind of just used my base knowledge of different internet things to kind of throw terms and things like on it. And then I started to see it getting used in a way that I don't personally agree with, which was companies snatching it up and just kind of making stuff out of it and selling it with either the incorrect name, uh, my attribution not attached to it, purely profit based, rainbow capitalism based marketing. Um, and so kind of like that for me was kind of like a changing point because I was like, I don't like this. Eh, I don't. If you don't know what rainbow capitalism is, it's when a company changes all their logos to rainbows for June and sells their product with a bunch of rainbows all over it to gay people, and then as soon as June's over, they go back to the normal thing and ignore us for 11 more months. And I had a couple of companies who kind of burned me in a way where I tried to work with them, and they burned me. Just I'm not going to get into it because my lawyer would probably tell me not to because he doesn't want to deal with defamation cases. But um, but I just got sick and tired of being told by companies what I could and could not do with what I made. And so I turned around and said, okay, fine. We're going to change terms. We're going to change how this works legally. And I'm going to make a tiered system that favors small artists and small businesses and has heftier requirements on larger businesses or businesses that are purely in it for profit sake. So, you know, so last year I put out a big, I think last July, I put out like a big Instagram like story, multiple stories thing that was just like, hey, if you're an artist or a very small maker who just wants to, or even just a regular person who wants to post it on your social media, or you want to make a piece of art out of it, like, I don't care. Like, make it. It's totally fine. You're free to do that. Like, fine. If you want to tag me, great, because I want to be able to like your post because I love seeing all the art. Like, that's great. Um, and if, you know, like, and then if you're a small business who wants, or an artist who wants to make something that you want to profit off of, then, you know, come talk to me. I'll probably be really chill and we'll give you a free license, you know, depending on how it works. Like, it scales. Like, if a large company approached me and said, you know, like, we want to put out like 15 products and we're a huge multi-million dollar or billion-dollar company and we want to make, you know, money off of this and support the community or not, regardless, that kind of scale, I'd be like, all right, well, let's talk, you know, like some kind of licensing deal that seems fair. Because um, if you're going to make money off of something that is from my community that I created within my community, um, it's only fair that you give back to not just me as the artist, but the community itself too, for the work done, just to be able to do it. Plus, you know, I'm all for making large corporations pay for the things that they want to do. I don't think large corporations should get away with as much as they do in this country.
That makes sense. It sounds like this has really changed you, I guess, as a person, and then probably, you know, as somebody who's in business. You're suddenly in business, is what this is.
It has hardened my soul. Yeah, no, I am now a small business owner and I have no background in business and I hate it. No, no, I don't hate it. It's just really stressful. And it takes away from me being able to be an art maker as much as I want to. Which is why I have a team now. Like, I brought in some friends who do contract work for me and take care of some of the logistical things that I can't like mentally handle anymore. I have a friend of mine who works for me, and their thing was like, you know, they do consulting for small businesses who are especially like fresh start small, like just starting small businesses. And because the problem that often happens is that somebody makes something, they're a creative type and they make something and then it does really well, so they start a business around it, and then they get stuck in all of the business stuff and it burns them out and they lose the business because they can't handle it anymore. And so their thing is they would go into small businesses and help them kind of like figure out how to do the day to day, so the maker who made the thing can go back to being the maker and the business can be the business. um so they're on my team. They're also one of my best friends from a long time ago, but they help out a lot and it's been really grateful. So it's allowed me to get back into kind of the making and the doing kind of thing, which is, you know, honestly what I should be doing as a creative type. I shouldn't be worrying, I shouldn't be expending my energy on business oriented things when it should be used on creative things and making more things.
How do you feel like you have impacted your community with the Progress Pride flag?
Um, I, you know, it's hard for me to conceptualize the entirety of impact because I feel like it's way beyond my level of understanding. But I think the thing that I think of the most when somebody asks me how you've impacted your community is I feel like I have, or the flag has caused a whirlwind of discussion across the world. Um, you know, there's a world level of discussion. There's a country level of discussion. There's a um, city groups, friend circles, all sorts of different levels of discussions happening around this flag and what it means, and you know, the good and the bad in those discussions, or the real critical thinking in those discussions. And so for me, that's kind of the bigger impact. I mean, we could talk about, like, how I'm doing as a small business and how other businesses are doing that utilize the flag, but also I don't really like talking about sales and stuff like that because one, it's inappropriate. Um and two, it's not really like, just because I'm able to, have some level of income for the first time in my life as an artist is not the important part of the impact of this design.
Is that
It's
diff-
it's it's a byproduct.
is that difficult to keep the mission the main thing when there's so much business around it?
Um, no, because in my mind, the message and the mission is always the first thing, and it always has been. It's why it started. Um, and my personal business and the businesses that utilize it, that was all secondary. It came afterwards. It was a result of. So I can't really like it came down to me like but you mentioned earlier that this must have changed me a lot as a person, and it really did, because what it did was is even though I have the business and some money to utilize within that business, um it really has changed me way more into a non-politically ignorant person. um I feel like I am much more politically engaged and socially engaged, because of the work that I've done with this flag.
That makes sense. To shift gears, I had meant to ask you to give me a tour through the composition of your flag.
Well, the TLDR version of the creative process was I suffer from extreme insomnia often, and in that time frame is usually when I'm most creative. So in the middle of the night, I was chatting with one of my friends who's also creative and suffers from insomnia, and I was bouncing. This was when I was considering doing the flag, and I was making it and like tossing out different versions of it to her and just being like, what do you think of this one? And what do you think of that one? And she'd give me some feedback and I would bring it back. And I want to preface one thing real quick is I'm the type of designer that I will make the finished product first and then I will iterate all over it. And then I will eventually go back to the first one and be like, no, that was the right one. Whereas most people are like, I'm going to do sketches and I'm going to do thought processes and all this other stuff. No, I just make something like, because I see it. As soon as I think about what needs to be made, I see it and I make it. And then I iterate from there. And then I go, no, it's still this one. um, so that's what happened with this flag. I have like 13 different versions of it that all are great, but I didn't really like as much. And so that was the creative making process of it. If we want to talk about the composition itself, I think one of the main parts that I want to talk about first is the use of the traditional flag in its original form, which is the six stripes. Because often what people complained about, and I say complain because I feel like when somebody is like, you're ruining the pride flag, it's a complaint, not a like not a constructive criticism. Um, but I wanted to at least acknowledge those people by saying, like, we can retain the originality or the traditional flag in some kind of way while still acknowledging the things that need to be acknowledged. So I separated the two elements away from each other for that reason. I had the five stripes. So I had like the black and the brown and the blue and the pink and the white. And oftentimes elements that are part of a flag that aren't part of like the main background of a flag are often against the hoist, which is the pole side of a flag. And I had done things like, diagonal stripes, vertical stripes, but I felt like it was still in that realm of too many stripes. And I felt like giving it a shape would in a way change it from just being a group of extra stripes, but now it's a shape. So originally I made the chevron shape first as my first try of it. I did do circles at one point, but it just didn't work for me. But I ended up sticking with the chevron shape because it aided the message that I learned while making it. So one thing for me when it comes to creating something is the message or the implications of something that I design isn't necessarily premeditated all the time. Like it's not necessarily something that I have thought of until I've made it, and then it's made itself apparent, which I think is totally valid in the creative process. You can make something and be like, oh wow, this makes it seem like this, or this adds to this messaging, or something like that. So for me, when I had the chevron shape on it, I was like, why this other than aesthetics? Why this shape? Why this direction? Why this positioning? Whatever. And to me, that's when the progress part of it came into it. Was that I saw, well, this is an arrow, and arrows often point somewhere, and they mean movement. And so for me, it was kind of like, well, here is the message and the mission that we have, but it is still ongoing and it is still necessary. So it is a progression that we need to keep doing. So that's kind of where the composition lent itself to shifting the messaging a little bit.
Looking at Gilbert Baker's original creation, purple was spirit, blue was serenity, and nature, sunlight, healing. And the chevron, walk me through what the chevron represents.
So the chevron is composed of three main pieces. There is the trans flag, which is the blue and the pink and the white, which was made by Monica Helms, and it's the trans pride flag. It represents the trans community. And then the black and the brown is from the More Color, More Pride Philadelphia Pride flag, which was meant to highlight the need to focus more on people of color within our community who are often more marginalized than even the white counterparts within the queer community. But I wanted to also add in, because a lot of something that's very prevalent in our community is the stigmatization of people living with HIV and AIDS. And I know that back in our history, we had a flag for a short period of time. It didn't really stick as much, but I felt like the history was interesting there. That's I can't remember his name. He was a sergeant. He suggested what was called the Victory Over AIDS flag, which was the traditional 6-stripe flag with a black stripe added to the bottom. And he wanted all flags to be made that way until we had a cure. And then when a cure was found, all those black stripes would be cut off and burned ceremoniously, kind of thing. I really liked that sentiment, so I imbued that same idea onto the black stripe portion of the flag, to kind of dual mean that this is for those people who are continued to be stigmatized for a disease that they don't need to be stigmatized for. We lost a whole generation of people to this disease. We don't need to continue to treat these people like they're dirty or they're gross or they're terrifying, because they're living and they're healthier than a lot of people who don't have HIV. It was kind of me adding in that portion too, because it's a very large, specifically queer marginalization that I felt needed to be looked at.
Makes sense. That's a great story. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me your story.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking about it.
For more on the design of the Progress Pride flag and the charity work that Daniel Quasar is doing with it, go to the website progress.gay. To learn more about Daniel Quasar as a designer, go to the website danielquasar.gay. You can also follow them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Bandcamp using the handle Daniel Quasar.
You've been listening to Input Doc.
Missed a reference? Are you more of a visual learner? Then check out clydegolden.com/inputdoc for the transcript and links to the topics in this episode. Now, if this conversation has left you wishing for more marketing strategies that will fuel your business's growth, we can help. Email Tim at clydegolden.com to get started. Input Doc is hosted by Tim Yaden, produced by me, and edited by Lily Jew. The music and cover art were created by Brian Leahy. A special thank you to all the guests who give us their valuable time and insights. Now, if you're still listening, then you're probably driving, and we do not condone looking at your phone while you drive. But if you're not driving, have you given us a 5-star review yet? Have you subscribed to our podcast? Just a bit of food for thought from your favorite producer, Megan O'Neill. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.